part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
The 1-1 pitch. A swing and a drive to deep right. Away back. Goal!
And with that Hemi call, it is time for another episode, or should I say new episode, of Guardians of the Land MLB podcast, formerly known as a Swing and a Tribe MLB podcast. Hello, everyone. I am Mike Voorhees, and introducing for the very first time as my brand new tag team partner, Bryan Shaw. Welcome into the chaos, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. I'd like to point out that I'm not the pitcher, Bryan Shaw. If I'm known for anything, it's that I'm the former meteorologist, Bryan Shaw, but happy to be a part of the podcast. I did a couple guest appearances last year, and it was a lot of fun. Brent decided he was going to step away, and I'm very grateful that both of you guys asked me to come back on and asked me to be a part of this. Super excited to do this full time. We'll bring episodes. We're thinking every 2 weeks, kind of a nice little middle ground. If something important happens, then we'll squeeze an extra one in there and bring you updates as we go throughout the season. But the biggest update for people is baseball is back.
Baseball
the CBA
is back.
Has been signed. It was a very rough 2 weeks of a lot of missed deadlines.
2 weeks. Let's talk about 99 days.
This is true. But the 2 weeks of hardcore negotiating and the deadline after deadline after deadline that came and went, and we kept being told, well, this is the deadline for 162 games, and this is the deadline for 162 games. And now 2 weeks later, we're still going to get 162 games.
I have a feeling that the commissioner is like the dad who wants to punish his kids, and he makes that outlandish, threat, and he knows he can't keep it, but he has to say it anyway. That's kind of what I kept getting the opinion of. And I know you and I were both checking Twitter quite a bit over the last couple of days, waiting. We heard it was close, and hey, it's in the final it's in the voting stages. And I was like, we could be close. This could be great. We didn't know what we were going to do. And now all of a sudden, signatures have been signed. It's been ratified. Owners are on board. Baseball is back. New name, new pod, same coverage. That's pretty much the best way I can say it. We're really excited to have Bryan as a part of the team. He filled in admirably last year for Brent. We named him our resident statistician. Bryan has his stat game on lockdown. He knows what he brings to the table. He knows what he's talking about. So we're very excited to have him. But so Bryan, let's jump right in. Why don't you let everybody know, kind of give them a synopsis, if you will, of why we were locked out, some of the big changes for next year, and what we have to look forward to.
Yeah. So I took the time and I wrote all this stuff down. So let's start off that we are getting 162 games of baseball, even though they had canceled those games, or, they can't see me, but air quotes canceled. And then they told us that opening day was going to be April 15th. Well, then they backtracked and said, no, we're not going to cancel those games anymore. It's going to be April 7th again. So opening day, April 7th, that does include the Guardians. They were originally going to have a game scheduled April 8th. They moved that game up a day so that they were starting with everybody else. The home opener for the Guardians, though, is April 15th with the Giants in town. So we're getting interleague play for the first home game. Those games that were missed for that week that was missed, because original open day was supposed to be end of March, is going to be made up in double headers. So the big thing about the CBA was about getting players paid sooner. They didn't, the manipulation of service time and the arbitration and the minimum salaries and things like that. So there's all these things in place now to help with that. The league minimum now is $700,000, which is up $129,000. And
I'll take that league minimum any day of the week.
Right. And then it's going to go up 20,000 each year from there. The luxury tax is higher now. It's up to 230 million by 2026, it'll be up to 244 million. And then they've put penalty thresholds for every 20 million you are over that.
So for those that don't know, the luxury tax is how much a team can spend before they have to pay a tax. A team like the Guardians, we don't necessarily have to worry about a luxury tax unless we start spending more money.
Well, but contrary to popular belief, the players actually wanted that luxury tax higher because they felt that the owners do use that as a cap. And if the tax is higher, the owners will spend more. That means the players get more money. A couple of things for rules when it comes to younger players. You can only option a player now 5 times a year. And then there's a bonus pool for younger players. Now, this is a pool of $50 million that all the teams pay into. And a younger player, like let's take, for example, Shane Bieber, when he won the Cy Young, he would have gotten a bonus from Major League Baseball for winning the Cy Young Award, even though he was pre-arbitration. So all of that is pre-arbitration players. Before they get signed to big contracts, he would have gotten a bonus. And out of that 50 million, 100 players that are pre-arbitration will get some sort of bonus based on incentives. And it could be things like WAR, Cy Young voting, Rookie of the Year, all those kinds of things. So that helps the younger players, and that doesn't necessarily come from the teams that they're playing for. It's every MLB team puts money into this pre-arbitration pool, and then it gets divvied up amongst everybody. So if Shane Bieber wins the Cy Young again while he's pre-arbitration or whatever, the Guardians are not on the hook for that bonus. It doesn't have to come out of their money. The owners wanted some concessions here too. They were saying like, if we're going to do this for you, what are we going to get? They're going to get patches and decals on jerseys and helmets. The big one, 12-team playoff.
Yeah, that is huge. That is very big for baseball.
So 12-team playoff. So what happens now is, so you're going to have 6 from each league. The top 2 seeded division winners get a bye. And I believe it's a 3-game playoff in the first round.
Yep, I did see that.
So it's a 3-game playoff in the first round. So more teams are making the playoffs. What else do we have here? Oh, and as part of that, there will no longer also be a game 163. That is dead. If there's ever a tie, then it goes to kind of like NFL rules where there's tiebreakers based on, I don't know the hierarchy, but it'll be things like head-to-head, matchup, division, record, things along those lines will determine the tiebreaker. Universal DH this year.
Oh, I know. No more pitchers hitting.
No more pitchers hitting.
Well, unless they pull their DH and blah, blah, blah. That's getting into rules. But yes, DH now, folks, which I've been crying for years. We finally get it. No longer do I have to worry about a pitcher tearing an oblique trying to swing at a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. Now we're going to see lineups that are absolutely incredible.
And who was it? Mad Max, who took one off the nose?
Yeah.
Bunting in batting practice. So yeah, nothing like that.
No
again.
more. Thank goodness.
Our double headers will be 9 innings each. No more
Thank
7-inning double headers.
This isn't church league softball. We don't need 7-inning double headers, folks. And then if there's a no hitter, does it count? All that stuff. I'm glad we can throw that out the window. Let's focus on a 9-inning game. And the big one, Brian, the big rule that I'm very excited about is no more runner on second base when we start extra innings. Yes. Are you kidding me? I am thankful that that's over. Yes, it made baseball a little bit exciting, but come on. The run didn't count against the pitcher if he scored. No, let's get back to playing extra baseball. It's fun. But Brian, there's a bigger rule that we haven't even discussed.
But because they're next year has 3 big rules that they're putting in place. No shift for next year, which is very controversial. Incredible.
That's wow.
They're going to add a pitch clock, which I believe it's going to be 14 seconds if there's nobody on base, and then 19 seconds if there is a base runner. And then they're also going to enlarge the bases, which should help promote stealing.
Yeah, and it's going to help with injuries and things. That pitch clock they're putting in to kind of speed the game along. We know that baseball can be long. It can be tedious. Doing these small things will help, I think, increase, it'll speed up the game. It'll help things go a little bit quicker. But man, I can't believe next year, no shift. So Ramirez isn't going to ground out to a guy in short right.
So that's the big one, is that you're not going to have, the shortstop playing shallow right field. The big one for me was always, because of the way the camera work was, you were always used to seeing if a hit came basically right back up the middle over the pitcher's head, like when they shifted the camera, that was going to be a hit. But then with the shift, you're like, oh no, that's a double play.
Yeah, because the shortstop's playing in shallow center and he's able to get to the bag. And I think I understand there's a lot of people that are for the shift. I'm one of those that I don't like the shift. I think it kind of takes away from the game. These hitters are elite athletes. They know how to hit. They know what they're doing. But when you load up one side of the field and as a hitter, you're trying not to hit it to them, and eventually you're going to hit it to them anyway, because that's just how it works. Getting rid of that and allowing the field to open a little bit, allowing these hitters to do why they're paid millions and millions of dollars to do, I think that's exciting for the game. I think as a fan, it's going to be more entertaining for us to watch.
Yeah, that's the thing. It should help promote hits and rallies, which I think is an exciting part of the game, instead of the strikeout home run kind of setup that we've gotten over the past years. So one stat we're going to have to start looking at is weighted on base average versus the shift versus not the shift, and see who this is going to benefit the most. So
yeah,
there's some research to be done there.
And I think too, with the whole decal and sticker thing, I mean, we kind of knew this was coming. Most sports are doing it now. The NBA has done it, where you see the little logo up in the corner. It helps a business to promote their business, and it allows these teams to kind of make a little bit more money. And as a franchise, why wouldn't you want to make a little bit more money?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, as long as it's not, some crazy advertisement and they're huge. It's going to be no big deal. It'll probably be on like the chest, like on the collarbone or on the back of helmets or something like that, to where it's just going to be, very soon it's going to be a part of the game and you're not even going to notice it. So yeah, that I have no problem with. I do understand the people who want to keep the shift. I did kind of have like, somebody said like, well, that's like the NFL not allowing 8 in the box, to stack up against the run.
I think you're comparing apples to oranges, because last I checked, baseball is baseball and football is football. Like you're never going to be able to make people happy. No, you're never going to be able to make every single fan happy. But let's look at it after next year, and then we'll talk about it and we'll see where we're at, because guess what? If Major League Baseball doesn't like it, that's something they can obviously change.
And I wonder too, the semantics of the rule when it comes to, okay, well, can they move after the ball is thrown? So are you going to see, say, the second baseman shuffling off and running to shallow right field every time and running back and forth? That could be something that you see, that like, while yes, maybe pre-pitch you can't shift, but as soon as the ball is thrown, you can move to a spot and try to shift that way, like but that'll wear guys out probably pretty quickly if they're running back and forth every pitch.
It'll be interesting to look at. I wonder why they never really revisited the rule of the left-handed specialist, the guy that could come in and face one batter and then he could leave. Unfortunately, the Major League Baseball did he has to face a minimum of 3 batters. That might be something we can look at, because I think it's fun when you have a specialist that can come in and get one out. Why don't you think they talked about that at all, Brian?
It's the same reason that we're getting a pitch clock. They wanted to speed up the game. They didn't want Terry Francona switching out pitchers every batter. And he would. So,
well, unfortunately, then my days of ever trying to make it to the majors is done. I'm left-handed. I enjoy maybe only ever having to throw to one batter. I guess I'll never make it to the bigs. So, oh well.
All right.
I'll stick to church league softball.
Let's take a break here. Coming back up after the break, let's talk about our Guardians. Let's talk about the guys that are going to be in spring training, and are they going to make any moves? They protected a lot of guys on the 40-man roster that most people may not have heard of that have been in the farm system, and are they going to keep them all? So we'll have that coming up.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
What's good, everybody? My name is Taylor Vanderbilt, and I'm the host of the 440 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. On the Full 40, we talk about literally everything college basketball related. It could be women's, it could be men's, it could be recruiting, it could be the tournament. It does not matter. We cover it all. So check it out. Again, it's the Full 40 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
And we are back from that commercial break. My guess, I've called my agent. I will not be going to the majors, Bryan. We'll stick to church league softball. And as
not even a minor league invite?
Probably not. I don't think the Guardians will take a stab at me. But as you said, baseball is back. The Guardians are here. We are going to have some sort of a ding, something. I have a feeling one of us, if not both of us at some point, will refer to this team as their former name. I'm going to do everything in my power not to say the name because I don't even want to get it in my head so that I have to say it. But the Guardians are here. Like Bryan had said before we went to break, they made a lot of moves. They made a lot of changes in the offseason. We have a lot of young talent that they needed to protect. And Bryan, is there a couple guys that you're interested in? We know the Indian, I almost said it. I stopped myself. Almost said it.
Well, here's my rule of thumb on this. If I'm going to refer to the past, they were the Indians then. And so I'm going to refer them to the Indians in past tense.
You know what? That's fair.
When it comes to future play, then they're the Guardians, and it's what the Guardians are doing. But
there you go.
The Indians were in the World Series in 2016. They, everything that was years past, they were the Indians. And for our sake, this is 30 plus years of calling a team name. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen to every broadcaster. But yeah, you had asked me.
I want to know who does it more, me or you. That'll be the game that we play.
Should we
who
just
says
do
it more?
Just have like a ding counter.
We should absolutely
on the podcast. Well, so I think the most interesting, I guess, what's going to happen over spring training is what's going to happen with this middle infield, because you have so many guys that are kind of interchangeable when it comes to position, whether they're second baseman or shortstops, and they're all almost at the exact same level. I mean, even last year, for example, we saw Andreas Jimenez, we saw Owen Miller, Ernie Clement, we saw Ahmed Rosario, and so that's four guys right there fighting for two positions. And then you're going to add in some of these guys that are right on the cusp. A Gabriel Arias, a Nolan Jones, a Tyler Freeman. So there's way too many middle infielders here and not enough spots.
And you forgot one. You can't forget about Richie Palacios. That kid started at Akron. He made it to Columbus. The team has put him in the outfield. I think he'll be an outfielder going forward. but I think that's a guy you got to look at too. And I think spring training is going to be huge to see what guys are at the top of their game. I have a feeling those are the ones that are going to make the lineup. Nolan Jones falls into that same category. Will he play first?
Or
will he go
play
in the
left
outfield?
field? Yeah.
Right. Because we know third base is currently entrenched with Jose, and he's not going to third anytime soon. So it'll be interesting to see, in my view, what spring training brings for these guys.
And let's not forget that they did try to put Ahmed Rosario in center field earlier in the season before they acquired Miles Straw.
Yeah,
so
I don't think we're gonna worry about Ahmed going anywhere. I think he's our starting shortstop. You got Miles Straw now. I don't see a reason to put him out in the outfield.
Unless you move him to left field because you have other middle infielders that you want space and you don't have enough outfilders. And Ahmed Rosario was a hitter last year. He was one of our better hitters, lots of doubles. And that kind of brings me to, like, okay, well, who's our keepers? Who's like the big guys where, all right, don't even call us about them. I know you're going to call us about them and you're going to say, well, we'll give you this, this, and this. But I honestly think that the last thing that the Guardians are going to do is want to acquire more prospects.
No,
we're not trading away Shane Bieber. We're not trading away Jose Ramirez. They just don't need more prospects. In fact, like I said, we need to package a couple of these guys potentially if they're on that cusp and we're not going to use them, and get a better outfielder or first baseman, somebody that can be a bit of a better hitter. And kind of on that note too, they've been quiet so far, but I'm not going to freak out until it's opening day and they haven't done anything. There's no reason to freak out until there's a reason to freak out.
I'll tell you what, Brian, I'm actually happy they haven't made any moves yet. I don't want them to. Here's why. You made a bunch of 40-man roster decisions on these players for a reason. There are quite a few of them that are at that AAA borderline. They could be in the starting lineup opening day. And I think that's why spring training is going to be huge. Guys like Gabriel Arias and Tyler Freeman, Nolan Jones. I mean, you've got, George Valera, Stephen Kwan. You've got guys
there's tons of them.
We know that the Guardians are going to have holes. We know that. Roberto Perez gone. He signed with the Pirates. He's not our catcher anymore. So that leaves
Austin Hedges is likely the starter.
And we don't have a backup yet. I mean, they have Sandy Leon. The Guardians did make a move and signed backup catcher Luke Maile, or Mile, however you pronounce his last name. I've heard it 18 different ways. We'll call him Luke and go from there. But I'm glad that they're quiet. I think they really believe and they have a passion for these young guys. And I think the front office believes in their ability. And who knows, these guys could really help us. So then there isn't a reason to go out and try to sign Chris Bryant, Castellanos, guys that we may or may not need.
That's fair, but there's still too many. And whoever they decide to bring up to the major leagues, you still have guys that are valuable. And maybe you do have a new starting shortstop and a new starting second baseman this year in the lineup, but whoever doesn't make that cut, can you package some of those guys that maybe are a little bit younger and get a left fielder or get a right fielder? What are you doing with Franmil? Is he going to play some right field? Can Josh Naylor come back from injury? To go that approach of like, okay, we're just going to go all young guys. That's way too many question marks to ask for it all to come into place for them to be a contender. Like you can have some question marks. You can have some, well, maybes and what ifs. And if things kind of align, then it'll look good. But when you're kind of basically crossing your fingers and hoping for that many, that is risky to me. And I do get your point that maybe it's just they're going to wait 2 more weeks and see what they have in these guys before they start making those deals, because they haven't seen them actually in spring training, and then they don't know who they need to hang on to quite yet and who they can move on from.
Well, I think too, and here's what I'd like to see happen. I mean, obviously we found out last year with injuries that our starting pitching depth is very thin. I would love for them to package maybe a prospect or two and maybe get another starter. I mean, we know that Shane Bieber and Savali and McKenzie and Quantrill and then Plesac, we know those are your five. We know that going in, those are going to be the starting five. But we learned last year that we had some guys that we needed to call them up due to injury, and they just didn't get the job done. Not saying that they're not talented. I'm not saying that, maybe in a different year it would be different, but obviously
they were just thrown into the fire too soon, and you didn't have a veteran.
We go get that fringe type guy that could maybe start the year at AAA, and then if an injury happens, boom, he can come up and he can help us. They tried with Sam Henches and Eli Morgan and Juan Carlos Mejia, who's no longer here.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it wouldn't hurt. Maybe you package a couple of these prospects and you go get a bullpen arm, because we know our bullpen got taxed last year. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they can't put some guys together and try to improve this team. I just don't see them going out and making that big signing or that big splash that everybody's expecting.
No, and I don't really expect it either, but I'd love another Miles Straw type of trade where there's somebody that they're very good at scouting other teams, and there's somebody that's not getting the playing time that he should be, and he comes here and you give him every day at bats and he flourishes. Miles Straw was the fourth outfielder for the Astros.
Yep.
And he's arguably our best.
He is now, because we've got, I know Harold Ramirez played really well last year. The Indians traded him to the Cubs.
Yeah, that was a surprise and
that was to me, but we knew
go.
that they had to make some 40-man decisions, and it was going to be tough. But yeah, Harold Ramirez was the big one for me. I couldn't believe when I saw that they had traded him, but I get it. It's time to see what this team will do. You've got a brand new name across the chest.
Well,
the Indians, aren't here anymore.
And that's the other people from what I see on Twitter, and I know Twitter isn't it's a vocal group one way or the other, but all the people that are, really upset about the name or really mad about the spending, they pretend that they're not paying attention, but they're basically looking for a reason to pay attention and a reason to want to root for this team. And the ownership needs to take advantage of that. You have an opportunity to get people excited, to get people interested. And you're also now going to be fighting with the Cavaliers, who are getting better, for eyeballs, especially for the first half of the season until the NBA season is over. So, and people are buying up Cavaliers tickets, and they're buying season tickets for next year. People are going to buy their Browns tickets, but in Cleveland, it's the Guardians versus the Cavaliers when it comes to that extra money spending. Right. And I don't think that they can just sit idle. And we already have the joke that this team is a AAA team, but when 50% of our guys that might be on the opening day roster were basically just in AAA and people haven't really seen them in the majors, well, that's where that joke comes from.
Right. And I agree. I see your point, and I agree. I mean, the Guardians need to do something.
Yeah.
To make people interested. If that's going out and maybe not getting that top tier free agent signing, maybe it's a mid-level trade, like what you said, Brian, that Miles Straw trade that we got last year. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's one or two moves like that where you get people that can come into this team and help. We know that the AL Central is not the toughest division in baseball. The Guardians can prove with pitching, the starting five that they potentially could have, barring injury, they probably have one of the best rotations in baseball. It's the offense that's going to have to carry it with Franmil, with Jose, who's on first? Is it Bradley? Is it Naylor? Is it a new guy? Is it going to be a new face who's in the outfield? You've got pieces and parts that you can work with. And if anybody's got the farm system to pull something off, it's us.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, that was kind of the point of all this. That, you know, when you traded Bauer, when you traded Lindor, when you traded Clevenger, and you got all these guys, and then you protected them all, you were basically taking as many swings as at getting good players as possible. But now you have a huge log jam, and you have a really good farm system. So let's package some of these guys together and get a couple of extra pieces that could make you better than 500. I don't think they need another 80 season.
Right.
That's what you don't want. Or just
What did
or
we finish? What did we finish last year, Brian?
Just under 500. I think it was like
And
one
that
or
was
two
with
games under 500.
all the injuries and everything that we have. And now you have included a couple more teams to make the playoffs now. Well, I'm not asking the Guardians to go 110 and 52. Like I don't
get to
think
the dance.
That's possible. Get to the playoffs, get hot, and roll with it.
Because let's also remember, and I know there's a recency bias and people have short memories and tend to forget. The 2016 team was not expected to make it to the World Series.
Nope.
They were not at all. And I have seen people saying things like, well, you know, this ownership group never goes for it and they never go all in, as if they didn't trade for Andrew Miller and Jay Bruce and signed Edwin Encarnacion during that time period to really supplement that team and try and get them over the hump. But, you know, for after 16, they were just choking the playoffs away. And, you know, despite the efforts of the front office and trying to get players and trying to get hitters, and even 2 years ago, during the shortened season, when we had the 3-game playoff, Shane Bieber had one of his worst games ever.
Yeah.
You can't, yes, he was young and maybe the at that time, the moment was a little too big for him, but you can't anticipate that kind of thing, that your ace that just won the Cy Young is going to go out there and just have a complete clunker.
What's the old saying? You can't be perfect every day. You're going to have games where guys are off, and it's kind of that next man up mentality. That's what we have to have with this team. Like, in my opinion, Shane Bieber is probably one of the best pitchers in baseball, hands down. If he's not injured, he is an elite pitcher. He could carry this team. You give him, if Savali plays as well as he played last year, and Quantrill pitches well, and Tristan McKenzie pitches. We've learned that in baseball, pitching can take you far.
And Quantrill and McKenzie had very, very strong late seasons. Like Quantrill was like pitcher of the month for a couple of months. Yeah. And his ERA was really low. McKenzie, when he figured it out, came back very, very strong. Kind of the biggest wild card when it comes to the pitching staff. You had mentioned the bullpen. You know, can Karinchak come back from not being able to use the sticky stuff? And that's something that we actually haven't heard about.
Substance gate. Yeah, but substance gate.
With all this new CBA, there's been no mention. Are we going to have substance checks like we did last year?
Yeah.
Or are they going to, was that 1 year thing and they're going to look away from it? There hasn't been any mention of like any rules and what the suspensions are for any of those things. So that's a complete wild card, you know. And what is Karinchak going to do? Did he learn how to pitch without it? Or is he now washed because that's not an option for him and he's not going to have the drop on his curveball that he did? So,
well, and like you said, our bullpen, our offense, but guess what? This is the best part. This is episode 1 of the 2022-23 Major League Baseball season. I'm over the moon that we actually get to play baseball here very soon. We're going to have spring training games very soon. Guys are reporting today. Spring training starts, quote unquote, tomorrow. I know the Guardians said they're going to kind of softly roll into spring training. They got guys that have been showing up Saturday, Sunday. There were guys that were there Friday after the agreement was signed. They were reporting to spring training because they're excited and they want to play. I cannot wait to see what this season brings, but I can tell you one thing for certain. You and I, Bryan, are going to be all over the Guardians this year. We're going to bring you guys all the goods, all the bad, the ugly, everything. That's what you get. I can't wait. We'll get back with you soon with who's on the team, who's somebody to look out for. We've got you covered. 162 games, man.
Either way, it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of question marks and a lot of things to play out. So at the very least, it'll be interesting.
How about a little teaser? Do you think we can give the fans a little tease right now?
What are you looking for?
I know that I'm going to say this and Chase may say something later to me, but there may or may not be a Guardians of the Land MLB podcast live show.
We are going to try and make that happen.
Guys, we're
in
trying.
Very early discussions. We'll see if we can pull that off. And then you can come say hi and yell at us in person and say that we're idiots and we don't know what we're talking about.
Can't wait. But Bryan, I'm super excited to have you on board, man. I think we are going to have a phenomenal season, win or lose, getting able to hang out with you and pick your brain and hear what you got. I'm excited, man. I'm excited for what this season holds.
Happy to be here. And yeah, we'll talk soon. Once things continue to shake out, we'll have another episode up for you guys. Hope you join us.
All right. Once again, folks, you can find us on social media, Guardians of the Land, MLB Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Maybe we'll have a Snapchat. I don't know. Lots of things that we can discuss between here and there. But while you're looking, make sure you go to the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe there as well. We've got you covered. Podcasts galore. Old, young, big, little, doesn't matter. We've got you covered. Until next time, Bryan.
I'm Bryan Shaw. He's Mike Voorhees. We have Orange's Oranger. We have Cavs on the Break. All your sports coverage. Make sure you tune in.
Absolutely. Until next time, folks, have a good one.
Part of the Press Play Podcast Network.